Australian home buyers are also closely watching that policy decision. A rate cut could make a big difference in affordability and support government efforts to ease a growing housing shortage. Roger Maynard tells us more.
The ban on foreign property investment will be seen as a step in the right direction to help ease the housing shortage in Australia and will clearly benefit local buyers, but it's unlikely to have a major impact. Certainly, it'll make it more difficult for overseas purchasers to buy into the Australian market, but in reality, it'll only free up around 1,800 properties a year for Australian buyers. However, it's the perception that counts, and the message here is that the government is seen to be doing something to solve the housing crisis, which is affecting so many Australians at the moment. Over the past few years, we've seen prices soar way beyond the capability of younger buyers to pay for first-time homes. At the same time, housing availability has tumbled and has clearly been exacerbated by record migrant numbers. That's put added pressure on the rental markets, with prices going up around 20%. That's assuming you can even find a place to rent. Public dissatisfaction with the overall problem is likely to dominate this year's general election campaign. And that's why both the major parties are supporting the ban on foreign purchases of existing homes, which will last for the next 2 years and possibly longer. The Housing Minister, Claire O'Neill, said the latest initiative was a small but important part of the government's broad housing agenda, which also includes shared equity schemes and tax incentives for developers. The aim is to build 1.2 million new homes by 2030. The current housing shortage in Australia has been a major contributor to the rising cost of living here, with interest rates causing a big headache for homeowners. That may be slightly eased tomorrow when the Reserve Bank is expected to reduce rates by 25 basis points to a cash rate of 4.1%. It's not much, but it would certainly make those monthly mortgage payments a little more bearable. Most economists are predicting at least 2 cuts this year as a result of reduced inflation, which has now fallen to 2.4% compared with nearly 8% in 2022. If that happens, it'll be welcome news for Australia's Labor government, which has to hold a general election by May of this year. Indeed, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese may even be tempted to go to the country in April if the RBA decision is favourable. So a lot is riding on this week's economic news, both from the government's point of view and the population as a whole. Roger Maynard, CNA, Sydney.
A shift in China's approach to the country's private sector as its tech rivalry with the US heats up. President Xi Jinping sat down in a rare meeting with some of the biggest names in the sector as Donald Trump seeks to cripple Beijing's tech ambitions. Footage from state media showed Alibaba co-founder Jack Ma leading prominent names from companies representing various industries, including chipmaking, EVs, and AI. Huawei founder Ren Zhengfei and Meituan's Wang Xing were also present. Leaders from companies that are seen as critical to Beijing's efforts to wean itself from reliance on US tech were also there, the likes of BYD, Xiaomi, and most notably, rising AI star DeepSeek. Well, the meeting comes just weeks after the Chinese startup's latest AI model roiled global stock market.
For the ones that are watching, I have a live stream on my website, on Rumble and YouTube. YouTube has the dashboard of the Asian market. And I also am doing a simulcast on X Spaces. If you'd like to ask a question, just go to my X channel, go to the Spaces, and just request the mic and you can ask a question or tell me what you think about what's going on in the world. Let me just do a market update here. The S&P 500 futures is trading at 6,139.75. The British pound to the USD is trading at 1.26. Natural gas futures is at 3.58. Gold futures is at 2,912. Brent crude oil is trading at $75.21 a barrel. Copper futures is trading at 4.6. The Hang Seng hasn't started yet, but the close was at 22,616, and the Nikkei for Japan is 39,314.55. and is rallying at the moment. All right, let's go back to C and A.
Yeah, so for investors, I think it's good to consider opportunities there. Not only the political rhetoric is changing, but the valuations are also at the right levels. The rhetoric has also changed a lot among the wealth management sector. So when the deep sea news happens, a lot of people start to rethink, because it had two effects. One is to show how far China has come and the developments within China. The other thing is also to show that there might be risks to the US outperforming other markets forever. We are not saying we shouldn't go at the US, but we always like to be diversified across geographies. Also, though, since we talk a lot about tech and AI right now, I would like to emphasize as well that it's very important to be diversified across sectors as well and styles. AI and tech isn't the only game that is necessarily there, and also we might see more and more competition the higher the growth rates in there are. So it's important also not just to diversify in terms of geographies and look for opportunities here, but also keep in mind that we don't just want to overexpose to any one sector and any one market.
Okay. What I want to do is I want to pivot to CNBC live from Singapore.
60% across the board tariffs or 10% tariffs. These are opening salvos for a discussion to begin. Now, I think to your question on what could go wrong, if those numbers are actually realized, that would not be something the market's currently priced in. Market's pricing in some tariffs. So we look at a lot of data on what consensus is saying, and I think US weighted average tariffs are around 2%. I would say if they go up through various announcements and agreements that are put in place over the next 2-3 months to something around 7 or 8%, I think that's pretty much baked into the cake right now. But not a 10% across the board, not a 60% across the board, not a 25% on Mexico and China. Those are not in the prices. If those actually do materialize, then that's when you have to use the we got a problem.
We've got to leave it there. There are so many dimensions that I wanted to pick up on, and especially India and Japan, key overweights last year, whether that paradigm holds this year as well. We're just out of time, Anviti. Thank you very much indeed for joining us with your analysis this morning. Anviti Ahuganar there from Northern Trust Asset Management. Thank you. As we head off into a break, let's take a look at the FX space. The greenback hovering near 2-month lows right now. This is how the major pairs and crosses are shaping up. Dollar index in the top left-hand corner of your screen, 106.58. Australian dollar is in focus as well, ahead of the RBA and expectations that we could see the first rate cut since 2020. 63.49 for the Aussie dollar against the greenback. Quick break, back in 2 minutes.
All right, let's go to live now about this Delta crash. There's no fatalities. It happened in Toronto today.
Information comes in very piecemeal, very fluid, and so thank you for bearing with us there. But we have a lot more top headlines to cover on this busy President's Day. Hope you're enjoying a long holiday weekend. We'll get to those top stories when we come back.
All right, they're on break. All right, while they're on break, let's plug a product here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. It's almost 1,000 times more potent than vitamin C. All right? Why? Because it's the shape of the molecule looks like a soccer ball. It's a fullerene, and the electrons float around the structure. And because of that, it can neutralize free radicals at a much higher rate than a single molecule of vitamin C. C60 is suspended in a lipid. You can get it in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, or extra virgin olive oil. It has to be in a lipid, it has to be in an oil so you can absorb it. Taking it on an empty stomach is best for the best absorption. And if you work out, take it before your workout so it can soak up the free radicals that you produce during your workout. You'll recover quicker after your workout. That's one of the benefits of taking C60 before your workout. In addition, by taking this every day, take a teaspoon a day, every day, and you're going to notice that your energy levels are going to be improved because your mitochondrial health is going to improve. Your ATP is going to go up, so you're going to have more energy in your cells. And when you have more energy in your cells and you're reducing the stress in the cell and in the tissues, those tissues are going to perform better, whatever their design function is. So your organ system for that tissue is going to perform better. So that means that your immune system is going to get better, your organ systems are going to get better, your glands are going to perform better, your endocrine system, your exocrine system, they're all going to perform better. Your neurons will perform better, and you're going to notice that you are slowing down the aging process. A big part of that is that because you've soaked up all these free radicals, but you're also bringing down the stress that are in your tissues. So by bringing down that stress and soaking up those free radicals, you're literally slowing down the aging process. When you get older, you're building up a lot of free radicals and you're losing the capability of soaking them up. You're losing the capability of breaking down those free radicals, and you just age faster. You literally, as you get older, you oxidize faster. Well, taking strong antioxidants slows down that process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Take it every day, take a teaspoon a day. And again, because it improves the mitochondrial health of your cells, including your neurons will have a lot of ATP to be able to produce neurotransmitters, to be able to release those neurotransmitters in the presynaptic neuron. And what that means is that you're going to have positive neuroplasticity. Your memory is going to actually improve. Your thinking will improve. So please take my advice. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, you get $5 off, and get the C60, couple it with other stuff like resveratrol and NAD plus and NAC and ubiquinol. Works really well with the stack. But this is a very potent antioxidant, and it's part of a 4-pillar core protocol that I have to improve your health. So what's that protocol? That protocol starts with max 35 or max 14. Improve your immune system. The second pillar is C60 to soak up the free radicals. The third pillar is taking turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. That brings down inflammation. And the fourth pillar of the core is taking Boomer Boost, and that will boost up your energy levels and rev up your metabolism. When you do that, you're going to be very healthy, all right? But it's a holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, supplementation, mindfulness, learning new things, stretching, balancing exercises. When you approach this from a holistic perspective, you're going to get healthy. Now, the proof's in the pudding. You've been watching me for like more than 5 years. I haven't been aging. Now, why do you think that is? And you compare someone else that's, a podcaster, and look at the way they looked 5 years ago. Guess what? They look like they've aged. Now, I'm not a vampire, all right? I guarantee you I'm not a vampire. The reason why I'm not aging is because the protocol works. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and follow my advice. And we're going to be talking about how to stack some of these things and get the great products that I offer. And you're helping to support my work, but you're also supporting your health. It's a win-win. All right, let's go back to senior aides in New York City for Mayor Adams to resign. All right, so let's see what that's all about.
Please step down. Not going to step down, I'm going to step up. But I need you to finish. And I want you to be clear. We want to hear so many movies and so many things. You're going to read so much. I am going nowhere. Nowhere. I am the second black mayor in the history of the city.
All right, so they want him to back off, resign, whatever, because he's aligning himself with Trump. Now, the Democrats don't like that because Mayor Adams is helping with the deportation of these illegals that are in New York City. Now, he's going through some court issues, right? The Trump administration basically had the DOJ tell other district attorneys to step down, or not step down, but to stop the case against Adams. All right, this is opening up the window for Cuomo to come in if Adams loses enough popularity where he might lose the election. And we know all about Cuomo, right? So, New York politics in action at the moment here. All right, let me continue with that issue here.
Effectively govern with Eric Adams as mayor. Back out live there to Lady Liberty. Well, a spokesperson from the Adams administration is telling Fox 5 New York's Morgan Mackay, our colleague, that these resignations are not final just yet, that they're waiting to have what they call a quote-unquote smooth transition to see who is the best fit for each of these positions. So according to some of these reports, the resignations include the deputy mayor for health and human services, the deputy mayor for operations, the deputy mayor for public safety, and the first deputy mayor. Well, let's bring into the conversation right now legal analyst Sam Bassett to kind of dive into not necessarily the political questions that have arisen from all of these resignations, but about the dismissal of the indictments itself against Adams. And Sam joins me. Sam, good to see you here. Thanks for joining us on this holiday. I got to ask though, if you were a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York and the top dogs in Washington brought this brokered deal to you in the form of a memo saying we need you to dismiss the indictment against Adams, it's interfering, it's impinging on our efforts to enforce some of these illegal immigration actions in the city of New York, would you have done it or would you have resigned like Danielle Sassoon did just on Thursday?
I suppose if I was privy to the investigation and I believed in what had been done and the indictment that had been returned, it would cause me to really think about resigning, as so many of them did. On the other hand, some people have life necessities they have to look out for themselves, and it's a real tough position.
A key important feature to the fact pattern here is the Democratic Party went after Adams, even though maybe there was some corruption before he was mayor, when he was city council or whatever he was in one of the boroughs. There may have been some overspending, or misappropriation of funds or whatever. They were going after him because Adams wasn't playing ball with the Democrats when it came to the sanctuary city. And so they went after him. They used lawfare against him. Now, was there misappropriation of funds years ago when he was borough president or council person or whatever they call him? I don't know. But the thing is they're using lawfare to try to shut him up and to not deport these illegal aliens. But he's saying that he's aligning with Trump. So now they're going full bore after him. And now there's, okay, You have the district attorneys stepping down because they're being told by the DOJ from the Trump administration to stand aside. But where were these DAs with the lawfare that was going against Trump? See the way this works with them? They always play. It's not like they're playing with Lady Justice blind. What's happening here is that they'll do everything to slow walk or to prevent Trump from executing his authority in the executive branch. With the lawfare, they try to prevent him to even get in the executive branch to be president. That was obvious. So they're using lawfare against Adams. Now, did he, misappropriate funds before he was mayor? I don't know. But they wouldn't have charged him if he wasn't, they wouldn't have gone after him if he was playing ball with the Democrats. They're going after him because of lawfare. That's the issue here. And they're trying to weaken him enough where Cuomo can come in and be mayor for the next election. Because Cuomo's trying to reboot his career, his political career.
Along that the Southern District of New York, the U.S. Attorney there, Damien Williams, who brought the indictments, that the indictments themselves were political in nature. Do you agree with that?
Yep. See?
Well, I think
Yes,
the
it was.
indictments predated Eric Adams becoming mayor. They examined his behavior before he was mayor.
Right.
So this was an investigation that was going on for like 9 or 10 years.
Right. And some of those allegations.
And why would you go after a current mayor unless he's not playing ball with the Democratic Party? So it is politically motivated. That's the point I'm making.
Right now saying, well, that should have never been handed down in the first place. The indictment should not have been brought here. Is that a hindsight is 2020 thing going on? Or would you agree with that assessment that the very bringing of the indictment was political in nature?
It was,
That's
for
what
sure.
Adams was saying all along.
I've been around federal agents and prosecutors for my entire career. Most of them are apolitical when it comes to criminal investigations.
Are you telling me that what rock has he been living under for the last 4 or 6 years? Everything that's tied to Trump has been, they've been going with lawfare. They went after him, his family, his advisors, his cabinet. Are you kidding? That they're unbiased, that the DA is totally unbiased, especially in New York? Come on. This guy is a clown.
Because I want to just point out, I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, the dismissal of the indictment is not final yet.
Well, I think once the prosecution moves to dismiss, a judge is certain to sign it.
Okay. But that has not happened yet, at least the federal judge, from what I understand. And you're right, that's the final say on this. They need to sign off and sign it. That has not happened.
Right. Well, I think he's definitely got a political, an uphill battle, to say the least, to survive the Democratic primary. I think what I'm hearing is that he's all but certain to lose that. But, I'm not a politician. I'm not an analyst, so I don't know.
Yeah. And somewhat of a wrinkle in this story as well was, say, after the election, Emile Beauvais, the acting deputy attorney general, left the door open to refile the charges when the election is all said and done. Do you anticipate that happening? Does that happen very often? Or is the door going to be shut once it's dismissed?
It's very rare. Something's refiled once it's dismissed, but it is a legal option.
Sam Bassett, we appreciate your time, especially on this holiday, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right, in the meantime here, we do want to take a quick commercial break. We thank Sam Bassett there for providing some legal and, yes, political insight. This is a political story as well. But in the meantime, let's take that quick commercial break.
All right, I want to shift back to CNBC here.
On the other side of this break. See you too.
Everyone's doing breaks here, unfortunately. Where is it? Is he going to go into a break or not? There he is. All right. Let's go to Al Jazeera. They're talking about China's involvement in T-Stra project. I'm not sure what that is.
And water scarcity, particularly in the dry season. And this is because the river is heavily in every town. And before that water can reach Bangladesh, it goes to many other communities and people and users and stakeholders. So the water is used for agriculture, is used for the production of energy, is used for civil uses. The problem is that there might not be enough water left for the downstream countries. And this is not something specific to this particular case. It's something that we can observe in many other contested rivers, particularly when they are densely populated and shared by two countries. Another point.
I'm going to go to CNA. They're talking about DeepSeek here. They just started their little show, a little segment.
Regulators are advising people to use it with caution. The Chinese artificial intelligence chatbot DeepSeek upended the industry on its debut in late January. The claims that it was built on cheaper and less sophisticated NVIDIA semiconductors. But governments worldwide, including South Korea, are worried about potential leaks of sensitive information. Like OpenAI's ChatGPT, DeepSeek's terms and conditions contain a section on the provision of personal data to third parties. But American firms typically resist government requests for data. It's widely perceived that Chinese firms will be obligated to provide information should the government ask for it. Beijing has, in response to the temporary suspension of DeepSeek's app, stressed that relevant nations should not, quote, politicize trade and technology as security concerns. And the Foreign Affairs Ministry also adding that the government consistently requires the Chinese firms to adhere strictly with local laws in their overseas operations.
And still ahead on Asia First, a Singapore.
No harmful pesticides, high quality ingredients, Stonyfield organic, good on purpose.
Break free with the new Opera GX, a browser that puts you in control with a brand new design that frees up even more pixels.
To lead up on a Singapore budget special, and at 3:30 p.m. Don't miss the Singapore budget.
All right, we're going to go back to CNBC.
From the digital asset solutions provider Ledger, and Pascal Gauthier is the chairman and CEO and joins me around the set here, of course, here to attend Consensus. A very good morning to you, Pascal. It's very good to see you again.
Good morning, Emily.
Good morning. I do want to get started with our conversation talking about President Trump. Since he's taken office, the U.S., of course, looking to embrace more ambitious crypto agenda. What does that look like?
Well, during the campaign, crypto has been presented like a fundamental right. What we call self-custody, but the right to digital private property was, sort of front and center. And this new administration is definitely pro-crypto. It's a big change from the previous administration. And right now, it's only the beginning. President Trump has been in office since January 20th. It's only been 1 month. So there are many things still to come, but the feeling is extremely positive. And I can tell you that the financial industry in Wall Street and everybody in the US is now moving with interest because he opened the gates for crypto, and now it's okay to do crypto. Bitcoin is okay.
And we've been watching some of the crypto prices. Bitcoin, I think the intraday high traded as high as 109,000. Do you have an outlook for Bitcoin prices?
What we do at Ledger is security. So we're here to help you secure your secrets and secure your coin, secure your Bitcoin and every other coin. So we don't really talk about the price, and we don't talk about speculation. What we talk about is usage, what people do with their crypto and how they use our products for their everyday crypto life. And what we're seeing is really more and more usage. We're seeing 22% of people, can you imagine, in Asia that have crypto. But crypto and Bitcoin, it's a platform, it's a protocol. So many applications are being built on top. DeFi is exploding, and so we have our eyes on this, not so much on the price.
Now, Ledger is a digital asset solutions company. You provide security with the digital wallet, or the hardware wallet, I should say. Now, it's sold over 6 million devices across 200 countries, and I remember it's Foxconn that makes your hardware. I have to ask you about this because Trump is talking about tariffs everywhere, and Hanhai, Foxconn is a company that is at risk. Where does Ledger produce its hardware?
So let me correct you. So we sold 8 million devices, not 6. So even better. Our last product, Ledger Flex, is selling like crazy. I presented it last time that I was on your show. I didn't have data. I have data now. So we're selling it twice as fast as the Nano X. So we launched the Nano X in 2019, and the Flex is selling twice as fast. Okay, so it means that the market is really here. And when it comes to the tariffs, with Foxconn, we produce from Vietnam. And so Vietnam is excluded from this tariff discussion. But again, we work with great partners and our supply chain is amazing. And so we will adapt to any situation.
Do you foresee flexibility in the need to move your production? Is that decided by you or the customers that buy your products?
Well, it could be a combination of many things. Right now, the setup that we have is really premium, and we have built a hardware platform that allows us to be very agile and adapt to really any situation. Hardware is a very difficult business. Agility is the key word. We have the best partners, so we're ready.
Well, I mean, he's doing more of the ability to transact with it. The reality is lately Bitcoin has been selling off. Now, Wall Street is looking at wrapping coins, you know, for ETFs and all this stuff. And institutional investors are starting to move funds into these ETFs. The problem is that as investors are moving into these ETFs, Bitcoin is selling off. So it seems like the big player is MicroStrategies. I think they renamed it to just Strategies, their company. But MicroStrategy seems to be, you know, a whale in buying this stuff. Well, the problem is that if there continues to be a sell-off of Bitcoin, then, you know, how valuable is it? It doesn't seem to be able to get over 100 and stay there, stay above 100. Now, it's bouncing up and down, like 101 to 95. It's like 95 right now, 95,000, right? And it's bouncing up and down. But there are a lot of people after the election started buying above 100. Well, they're underwater right now with Bitcoin. Well, is it stable or not? This is the point I'm making. Bitcoin is not a stable currency. Very high volatility, right? Now, the question is if there's going to be, you know, some sort of regulatory regime that seems to be, you know, regulatory regime that promotes crypto, then Bitcoin should go up. But the thing is the last week or so, Bitcoin has been selling off. So if there's so much interest, like he's saying, why isn't it staying above 100? Why?
Colleague will be leading the coverage of the Consensus Hong Kong event tomorrow, and will bring us an interview with Robinhood Crypto's Vice President and GM, Johan Cabral. So that's happening at 8:15 Singapore Hong Kong time tomorrow.
Yeah, so all these, you know, Robinhood and Ledger, they're trying to jawbone the market upward. Even Strategy, MicroStrategy is trying to jawbone the Bitcoin market up. But it's not working. It's not working. It's selling off. I mean, right now it's like, you know, the last I looked, it was 95. So if the ETFs aren't going up, which they're not, what the hell is happening? Are we going to see a major crash? Are we going to see like 95 and then drop down to 75 or 80? Or is it going to break through that 100 resistance level? Because there seems to be a major resistance level at the 100. Now, what I think is happening is that you have traders that are playing the ETFs and they're forcing them down because these ETFs are long and short and usually leveraged. So the traders are like going, boom, 100, short the ETF. Oh, below 100, long the ETF. It's that simple. Okay. Please go to my store. Where else are you going to get all this added knowledge. I just told you how to make money on ETFs, plain, long and short. So why don't you go to my store after you make the money in longing and shorting Bitcoin and get the multivitamin to help support your work and help to support your health and to help support my work. All right, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the multivitamin. This multivitamin is very easy to digest. Go to my store and take a look at the profile of what's in this vitamin. But the thing is take this every day. You need a good multivitamin as cofactors for enzymatic activity. Your enzymes need cofactors to work properly. Well, by taking minerals and vitamins, those are going to be the cofactors for proper enzymatic activity. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take this multivitamin every day as part of your daily routine and stack it with some of the other things that I talk about in this show. It's a very high quality vitamin and easy to digest. So please go to my store, use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. Get the multivitamin. And since we're talking about vitamins, also take a vitamin C supplement with magnesium. Why? Because it's going to boost up your immune system and improve your skin. You don't want to get scurvy, just in case you're like a sailor. So take vitamin C every day. If you're not feeling well, take a double dose, drink it with filtered water because it's water soluble, all right? So please go to my store, get the vitamin C with magnesium, get the multivitamin, take it every day, boost up your immune system, use discount 5, and you get $5 off. All right. Just to remind the audience, I am live streaming on my website, but I'm also live streaming on YouTube and Rumble. I am simulcasting on X Spaces. If you would like to listen on X Spaces, please go ahead. You can also ask for the mic and give me your take on the news today. If there's any new information that you would like to share about what's going on in current events, that's great. It's supposed to be an interactive show. So please join X Spaces if you'd like that to talk on the mic and reach a larger audience. So please do. This is an interactive show. All right, I want to go back to CNBC here.
Will to sustain Ukraine is not there, then an agreement between Washington and Moscow could in fact force Ukraine into some very unpleasant choices.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky isn't backing down though, saying he will never accept deals made behind our backs. But his leverage and political capital is also being questioned. Now the pressure is on to strike an agreement, one that stops Russia's war without handing victory to Moscow, weakening Ukraine or shattering NATO unity in the process. In Dubai, Dan Murphy, CNBC.
All right, bring it back to Asia, Australasia. In Sydney, take a look at shares of BHP. They are trading like this, 40.97, up a little bit more than 0.4%. So pretty solid gains there. This is after reporting its weakest first half profit in 6 years on the back of lower iron ore prices. But the big one still upbeat about long-term demand from China. So BHP's CEO, Mike Henry, is on deck. He's going to talk to us about his numbers on street signs. That is coming up in the next hour right here on CNBC. Stay tuned for that conversation. Down under, we're also counting down to the Reserve Bank of Australia Central Bank's decision, which is set to drop in a little over 2.5 hours from now, 11:30 a.m. Hong Kong Singapore time. RBA widely expected to cut rates for the first time in 4 years, cutting the OCR by 25 basis points down to 4.1%. Ahead of that, the Australian dollar trading at 63.47, call it 63.5.
Markets, before we close out the program, let's bring the focus to Australia ahead of the RBA and what could be the first rate cut since 2020, 8,490 1, down by just under 0.5%. We've got the Kospi up fractionally and the Nikkei up by 0.2%. That's it from us for this edition of Wall Street Signs is up next. Have a good day.
Alrighty, let's go to CNA. Oh no, they're doing weather at the moment. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, the death toll rises to 12 in Kentucky due to flooding. Let's go to the press conference here.
Also, thank you to our parks for opening their doors and helping our people. When we look at the state highway closures, Jim, where are we? We have 344 closures. Those are just state and federal roads. Again, we think this is record numbers of road closures across the state. At least 14 from mudslides, 3 from rock slides. They're in nearly all 120 counties. They are most heavily in western, southern, and southeast Kentucky. Jim will talk in a minute. Check the website that is up for both the closures and the openings because they're working really hard to get these roads open, and that's going to happen in real time across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We got 2,300 Department of Highway personnel.
Yeah, I'm going to shift over to Fox Business. They were interviewing Newt Gingrich.
Here, Pennell and GETTR act together for years. Joining me now, former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. Newt, during VP Vance's comments, you could hear a pin drop, and afterwards, all you could hear were tears. I mean, I know these are smart people, but they keep pushing back, and they just keep rejecting everything that seems obvious.
Sure, look, I mean, what you're seeing is the European version of what happened in America as Trump and MAGA gradually began to break up the old order and the old establishment. The European elites have controlled the continent. They basically built a huge welfare state. They opened their borders to millions of immigrants who are unassimilated, don't share their values. Just 2 days before the Munich conference, you had somebody drive a vehicle and kill 2 people, wounded, I think, 36. Again, nobody in Europe, none in the elites, want to talk about it. And I think J.D. Vance's speech, plus his speech in Paris earlier, those 2 speeches are the most important wake-up call to Europe, maybe in my lifetime. Because he's just telling them the truth. If you don't change, if you don't modernize, if you don't become competitive, you're gone. You will cease to exist as a civilization. And that's a fact.
You know, in fact, the first sentence, the second sentence, he actually talked about that attack that you referenced. And he talked about how horrific it is. And of course, he's there with his family. And, you know, and I think he was trying to make that connection, like, I'm with you, I'm here to help you, I'm here to help wake you up. And it's even arguable if they can even turn it around at this point. And of course, you referenced the MAGA movement. Here in America, we still have a lot of resistance. So yesterday on Face the Nation, host Margaret Brennan tried to take Vance to task. This is while she was interviewing Secretary of State Rubio. Take a listen to this.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship was specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany.
You know, there's 2 things. When she says, and you know that, Kamala Harris tried to do that a lot of times. I hate when they put something out as a fact that's completely ignorant and then try to force you to accept it. And you know that. Many say that Rubio took it easy on her. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, first of all, the American left-wing elites are utterly, totally ignorant of history. they make up fantasies, they believe in the fantasies, and then reality hits them and they're shocked. But here's what's going on. What J.D. Vance and I think President Trump and frankly, Secretary Hegseth in another speech, what they're trying to do is the equivalent of having an intervention if your neighbor's a total alcoholic and you're trying to sit down and say to him, you have to change your life. We're trying to say to the European elites, you're not going to compete with artificial intelligence. You're not going to compete militarily. You're not going to be able to modernize your society. You're not going to be able to compete economically unless you have profound changes. And of course, the elites are fine. They're doing great. The country may be lousy, but they're doing great. So they don't want to change and they're frankly angry at us for telling them the truth about their problem.
Yeah, they go around every 6 months to some palatial place, stay at 5-star restaurants, eat the greatest food in the world, and have these great discussions, and then agree to meet again in 6 more months, and everyone else suffers. You know, 2 weeks ago, you were at the White House, and I was reading where you wrote that you left, when you left that visit, you were as hopeful as ever. So tell us this groundswell of hope, why it's different now.
Because you have in President Trump, the most consequential president, I think, since Abraham Lincoln. You have somebody who's willing to look at the facts, offer totally new and unusual outside-the-box solutions, be very, very practical, negotiate with everybody, and both here at home and overseas, he's like a gigantic breath of fresh air. This is the closest we've come to being able to replace the 90-year-old Rooseveltian coalition, and it is the necessary intervention to help our European allies understand that they have to change if, in fact, they're going to survive. So the level of courage that President Trump, Vice President Vance, and their entire team is showing, I think is historic and remarkable. Look, they're going to make mistakes. Sure. You can't move at this speed, decide on things this big, and not have some things go wrong. But on balance, this is the most consequential presidency, I think, since Lincoln. Now, they've still got to pass a giant tax bill by May or June. They've still got to win the House elections next year. A lot of steps between here and history, but they're certainly off in the first month to an amazing start.
Yep. They really are. And I got to tell you, the roots of all of this go deep.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support my work by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on the homepage at the very bottom, or be a paid member to my Patreon channel. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. It's through the donations and being a paid member that allows me to do these videos for free. I have thousands of videos for free for people. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. I don't put stuff behind Substack and all that bullshit. All right? I put stuff out there to inform the public on how to improve their health and their wellness, give you my opinion about international affairs and how they dovetail into metaphysics, and I give you my take on what's going on with financial markets. And not only that, I tell you like how to make some money, all right, if you listen. So not only am I telling you how to make some money, but I'm also telling you how to slow down the aging process so you can spend that money. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support my work and help support your health. One of the great products that I offer here is Myotrol. Myotrol helps to allow you to build muscle and maintain muscle, all right? And it also helps to improve the health of the mitochondria. You need lots of ATP to build muscle and to maintain muscle. When you get older, about 40 years of age and older, you start to atrophy your muscles. So it's important to do resistance training. It's also very important to do proper diet and exercise and supplementation. You know, it's not just resistance training, it's also cardiovascular. You want to be balanced. All right. So when you're building up that muscle, it's important to fuel your body correctly, but also to take supplements that help to build that muscle. Now, Myotrol helps you to build muscle. Now, how does it work? It helps with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle. I have a product called, and I'll talk about it again later in the show, Gladiator Barley. If you stack these two together, you're actually going to build muscle. This is a high dense protein. It also has a bunch of other stuff that's great for your body, but it's a high dense protein. This is the material that will help you build muscle. This, myotrol, will help with the gene expression to build muscle. Both will bring down inflammation, and so you recover quicker. But the point here is that when you get older, you atrophy, and it's really important to improve your musculature, and that way you are moving around better. You don't want to atrophy, all right? So please go to my store and get the myotrol. Now, this also can be used for athletes, younger and older, because again, this helps with the gene expression for promoting muscle growth. So if you're an athlete, a great way to get strength gains in your sport is to take the myotrol, and as part of your pre-workout and post-workout fueling is to take the gladiator barley. And there's other benefits, because what happens is it soaks up free radicals that you're producing during your workout through superoxide dismutase, and also is bringing down inflammation, so you're going to recover quicker. So please go to my store, get the myotrol, and stack it for the best benefits with the gladiator barley, and make sure you do resistance training. Make sure you use discount, don't tell anybody. Use discount 5. Shh, don't tell anybody. Discount 5, and you get $5 off. All right. Let's go to the 5. This is a show on Fox News. They published 24 minutes ago here.
This is the left attempts to go nationwide to keep them on a short leash. Today, anti-Musk organizers tried to hold 50 rallies in 50 states, but it wasn't just the streets. Anti-Doge grievances also hitting the airwaves.
I'd just like you to show that you give a damn, that you have a little emotion about the fact that people are losing their jobs indiscriminately. Just like to see somebody wake the hell up and get excited about the fact that your country is under assault. They're not at the gate anymore. They're in your bedrooms. They're in your living room.
Wait a minute here. This guy is promoting the Democrats. All right? Mainstream media guy on MSNBC, I believe it is. The Democratic Party is a top-down party. It's a nanny state party. They want to tell you how to live your life. They want to tell you that the state is going to determine how they're going to teach your kid and what they're going to teach their kid. And if you're a mother and or father and you're concerned, you're conservative, let's say you're conservative and you work out and you take gladiator barley and myotrol, and right? But you're a conservative and you go to the city council meeting and you complain about how they're teaching the public school children, because you're concerned when you opened up, you took a look at some of the books that they have and they're reading, and they're promoting this gender dysphoria and promoting CRT and promoting DEI and promoting transvestite reading hour for 5-year-olds. And you get up there and you complain. There was a time where those parents were demonized and were put on a list of right-wingers, that they would be a right-wing, they're part of a right-wing agenda. And you had the FBI actually surveil them because they didn't agree with the woke agenda. This is all happening under Biden's administration. And this guy right here is promoting that horseshit. And now he wants to say that Doge is getting into your bedroom. You know what? We have way too much waste going on with the administrative state in the federal government, and it's time to clean house. Just like how corporate America had to restructure and people had to be laid off and they had to upskill and find new jobs and all this stuff. The government needs to do the same thing. And Doge, the last I looked, they already found 101 or 102 billion dollars of savings. They just started. Now, I don't know if they'll get to 2 trillion. I don't know. They may get to 1 trillion. But $101 billion so far in waste. And they want to stop, the Democrats want to stop the Trump tax cuts. How can you go to the public and say, we're going to stop the Trump tax cuts. We're not going to continue it anymore, but we're going to try to stop Trump from cutting the wasteful spending. And if Doge stopped right now, the Democrats are basically telling the public that $101 billion of wasteful spending is okay. No, it's not okay.
In your businesses, they got your data, though. They got all your stuff. Elon Musk has his tentacles in everything you're doing. And
why is he worried about Elon Musk? He's the richest guy in the universe. There's only one person that has more money than Elon Musk. That's God. He doesn't need to do this for money. Just look at the way he lives. He's not doing it for money. It has nothing to do with that. It's just doing the right thing and making sure that our country can be that exploring, innovative country that we have always been. Where was the anger with the NSA lying to Congress about collecting our data and sweeping it? You know, through working with AT&T and Verizon. Where was the anger there? The national security state has been surveilling you. This is the reason why I keep on saying that the national security state needs to be truncated and in some cases completely abolished. Where was his anger then? Oh, that's okay. The NSA, it's okay to take your information and break the Constitution and your Fourth Amendment rights. That's okay. But where's the anger there? I trust Elon a lot more than the NSA. Case in point, look at what Julian Assange said about what was going on with the national security state and your data. Look at what Snowden said. Where was the anger there? MSNBC. Where? Oh, you only have anger for Elon because he's aligned with Trump. So this is another case of orange man bad syndrome.
So that's all I want, somebody to show that they care enough to get out there and say something about it.
Guess
I'm
what?
trying to remember that.
You know, he needs to get off his fat ass and fight the deep state. Elon's not the deep state. What Elon's doing is actually finding the corruption that the deep state uses. They use these conduits within these agencies, hoping that no one's really watching. There's no accountability. When USAID is asked by Congress, show us the receipts on how you're spending the money, and they say no, don't you think that's a problem? What about Samantha Powers and how she become a multimillionaire? She was running USAID. She was part of the State Department. Oh, that's okay. He's really upset. He's got like serious diarrhea because he's so upset with Elon Musk, but not upset with the corruption that was going on at USAID or the problems that we had with the government breaking the Fourth Amendment rights of its citizens with these sweeping data policies that they have and lying to Congress about it. Where was the get off your fat ass back then?
Anyone ever got that passionate about mass layoffs at, like, in the automotive industry?
Right.
Or in,
Right, exactly.
financial services, Jesse.
Well, remember when the Keystone Pipeline workers got shelved?
Right.
Everyone cried. They said,
good point.
Learn to code.
Learn to code.
Or all those guys that were working for the U.S. military were fired for not getting vaccinated. Or all the Black Americans who lost their jobs to migrants. No one cared.
Right.
But some people got an 8-month buyout, a severance package with full benefits. It's not really the same. Dana, we are waging a 21st century information warfare campaign against the left, and they are using tactics from the 1990s. They are holding tiny press conferences, tiny little rallies. They're screaming into the ether on MSNBC. This is what you call top-down command and control. You get your talking points from a newspaper, and you put it on the broadcast.
This is what I'm talking about. The Democratic Party thinks top-down nanny state, central planning kind of mentality. And the way America really is, the way our founding fathers really wanted, it was chaotic. There were these local areas, and there was the chaos of the market, and eventually the actors within the market, with some regulation, right, with some rules, you have a vibrant economy because of the invisible hand of Adam Smith. But what you really have through the Democratic Party is not the invisible hand of Adam Smith. You have the big eye looking at you by the NSA 24/7.
What you're seeing on the right is asymmetrical. It's like grassroots guerrilla warfare. Someone says something on social media, Musk retweets it, Rogan podcasts it, Fox broadcasts it. And by the time it reaches everybody, millions of people have seen it. It's free money. And we're actually talking about expressing information. They are suppressing information. If you watch CBS News, they don't even talk about the scandals that the money is going to. Sri Lankan transgenders are getting electric cars. It's costing millions of dollars. They don't tell you about that. We tell you about it. It's colorful, it's witty, it's interesting, and it goes viral. That's the difference. They are late to the game, and there's no way they're catching up.
What, you did a little deep dive today on Fort Knox.
That I did. The interesting thing about Fort Knox is that the K is silent. Did you know that? KNOX, and K stands for Krugerrands, which suggests that perhaps there's less gold in Fort Knox than you think. You know, Fort Knox is evil. In 1933, Jesse, a few years before you were born, FDR declared private ownership of gold to be illegal and then took it under the threat of imprisonment. That was our gold. We didn't steal it from the Indians the way it was supposed to be. It was stolen from us. And then a year later, he doubled the price of the gold. And since then, it has been audited since 1953, 148 million troy ounces of gold, and we don't know if it's actually there. What if it's not there at all? Oh my God. I know. What if it's, I don't know, what if Dr. Phil has it? I have no idea. Poor Michael Steele. If he doesn't do that every day, he doesn't have a job. He's the guy you go to for the exploding head move. He's like that stress ball, you know, the stress ball you squeeze, the little things pop out of the ears. He has to do that every day because he used to be the former RNC chair 14 years ago, and he became the former RNC chair back then, and he's been milking that ever since. It's not relevant. It's as relevant as saying Ted Bundy was a Boy Scout. He was, believe it or not. I even did research on that. What's hilarious about the protests, and then I'll shut up, although people want me to keep talking, those protests are the same exact game plan that is used by USAID and other countries, which is to undermine foreign countries, with the or the sitting governments in those countries by creating discontent. You know they're funding it because the people shouting the loudest are the ones who are on the payroll. The protest really is no different than a guy screaming at a cop because he wants to look through the back of his car because he can smell the pot and the booze.
Judge, the president won a case today with the courts. The judicial branch is saying the president, as the head of the executive branch, has the authority to do what he's doing.
Presidents do it all the time. Everyone in the executive branch of government is the same as Elon Musk. They're not elected. There's something called a special government employee, and the special government employee, there are thousands of them. They're advisors, they're experts, they're consultants. These are people that the POTUS, the president, appoints, and they have to be permitted to do their jobs. And what cracks me up about Michael Steele is he's saying, show that you give a damn. Well, they did. They voted for Donald Trump because they cared about the border in their pocket, and they cared about crime, and they cared about inflation. And then he says, they got your data, you dumb ASS. Well, so did Clapper when he testified before Congress and said, well, we don't really spy on Americans, and then shifts his eye to the left and says, well, not wittingly. His outrage is so misplaced, and it's simply an example of their attempt to maintain political power. It's not about the American people. It's not about us. It's about their maintaining their power. And I just have two more points to make. Now they're going into the IRS, and the IRS has a system, and Jesse, you talked about antiquated systems. The IRS system, I think, was built in the 60s. And it is so antiquated that their IT system has failed all the fraud that they have since identified. And Lois Lerner unfairly targeted 501c3s that were conservatives, and nothing happened to her. That's what happens on the left. We just forgive everybody on the left if they can do something wrong. Well, that's not going to happen anymore because with Elon Musk, they're identifying crazy things like NIH, National Institute of Health. You say, you can't cut back on that. You can't let people go. The bottom line is they've got studies on the effect of meditation on parents. It's all waste and fraud so that they can keep jobs when they're not in power.
Right. It's like some of these things, Jessica, you could say, well, maybe they are worthwhile programs, but do they need to be paid for by federal dollars? And whoever the next Democratic president is in the future, if Doge is even slightly successful, then the government will be leaner, there'll be less waste, fraud, and abuse, and they could do more with what they have.
Totally. And I think Michael Steele was talking about elected officials from the Democratic Party. He wasn't yelling about rank and file Democrats. He was basically saying to the party infrastructure, you're doing this all wrong. Like having rallies in Washington, D.C. is not getting the message out about what the real implications of these cuts are. And yeah, whatever Jesse says, I mean, maybe we'll find out next week that it's, as true as the condoms to Gaza, but there's real stuff and stories. Oh, cool.
I did.
Okay, so he made that up. Don't bother fact checking it. It was made up. You need to talk about the 3,400 people from the fire service that were fired. For instance, I mean, Donald Trump was out in California talking about how we need more people working on this, that you need to be raking the leaves, that we're firing people. That 57% of the land in California is run by the federal government. So you need to do that. Firing these disease detectives when we have measles outbreaks, you could talk about that. Go out to your home constituents and talk about that. The nuclear weapons workers that were fired and then they had to get rehired because that was a mistake. Or even on a day like today, and I understand that the plane flipped over in Canada, that they're firing air traffic controllers and they're showing no cause, not based on performance or conduct for doing that. They did it Friday night on Valentine's Day at 7 p.m. So you talk about
Valentine's Day.
The best day of the year. No, but those are real stories that are affecting Americans on the ground.
All right, up next, Vice President J.D. Vance ripping into CBS host Margaret Brennan for linking the Holocaust to free speech, of all things.
All right, so that's the 5. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link's in the description of this video and all my videos. And get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce the inflammation at your gum line, improve your gum line, neutralize pathogens that produce plaque. And with good oral hygiene, you're going to reduce, you can reduce vascular disease and valvular disease. Many people, when they get older, they have poor oral hygiene and they actually start having problems with their valves because of inflammation of the valve will start to develop calcium deposits and then create stenosis, or that inflammation can weaken the valve depending on what sort of issue that patient might have, and it could prolapse or have regurgitation. So it's really important, not just for good oral hygiene, but also to realize that there are downstream effects if you have bad oral hygiene. And some of those downstream effects are vascular disease and valvular disease. So please go to my store, get this very high quality toothpaste. This is literally the best toothpaste you're going to be able to get. It has no fluoride. Why? Why, Dr. Paul Cottrell, is there no fluoride in your toothpaste? Because fluoride makes you stupid. All right? Stop taking fluoride. Now, get a few tubes of this toothpaste. Help support your oral hygiene. Help support my work. It's a win-win. And by the way, this toothpaste is way better than anything Alex Jones sells. Trust me. And Alex Jones has to go to his father, who happens to be an oral surgeon or retired or a dentist, to develop his toothpaste. And guess what? This one is way better. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the stuff I'm taking, all right? It works, all right? Another thing that's really important is to improve your gut biome. Now, I have a powder. I also have it in veggie cap version of a probiotic, but I prefer taking the powder, but some people prefer to take the veggie cap version, but it's important to take a good probiotic every day. Now, this powder is a small scooper. You mix it with filtered water or soft foods like hummus. That's what I do. Mix it in a smoothie. Take it once a day. And you're going to improve your gut biome. You're going to bring down gut inflammation, and that will improve your immune system and improve the mucosal barrier within your inner lining of your gut. That will help to reduce leaky gut syndrome, and that will help to reduce mutations in cells in the crypt. So if you have a lot of inflammation chronically in your gut, you're increasing your chances of colon cancer. So you don't want that. Trust me. My aunt died from colon cancer last year. So, you don't want that, right? So you want a good gut biome. It's going to improve your immune system. It's going to improve your metabolism. It's going to improve you absorbing your nutrients. Because if you have a bad gut, you're not going to be able to absorb your nutrients well. And therefore, your body isn't going to function as well. But with a good gut biome, you're also going to have a better, healthy liver. And with a good gut biome, you're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to have consolidation of memory because you have better sleep. You're going to have more energy because you have better sleep. And not only that, you'll be able to concentrate. So your mental acuity and clarity will be better. Your skin will improve with a good gut biome. Your hair and your nails will improve. A great sign to determine if you have a bad gut is the consistency of the stool, but and the physical characteristics of the stool, but also the manifestation on your skin. You can see disease of the gut on your skin by just looking at it, if you know what to look for. All right? Same thing with your nails and your hair. So a healthy gut leads to other healthy systems in your body. And the converse. An unhealthy gut leads to other systems to be unhealthy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic, either powdered version, which is the way I prefer to take it, or the veggie cap version. Either one of the products are very high quality. So please go to my store, use discount 5, get these products in your hand, use them, get healthy. It works, all right? And the more you stack these things, the better off all your systems work. Now, it's not just about taking supplements. It's also about proper diet, proper exercise. You got to do resistance training and cardio. You got to do balancing exercises and stretching. All 4 of those are really important. Mindfulness or some sort of meditation or prayer helps. Learning new things to get that positive neuroplasticity going. Talking to people, reading and writing. That's really important. Detoxifying your body regularly. These things, if you look at it from a holistic point of view, then what's going to happen is your whole body will start to improve over time, and you will age slowly. Now, are you going to be able to reverse your age to like when you were a baby? No, of course not. But the thing is, if you reduce the aging on your DNA, as you get older, your DNA will methylate. If you reduce that methylation, that aging methylation, you're reducing the problems that typically happen in your geriatric years. There are these points in time where there's serious methylation that takes place when you're an adult. All right. One is around 35 to 40 years old. There's a major inflection point where you start to methylate differently and you start aging faster. Another point is around 65. All right. So if you can stop that 35 or 40 inflection point and that 65 inflection point, then you're radically changing your age progression in your geriatric years. That's how this anti-aging works. And to stop that methylation that's taking place on the DNA, aging associated methylation, that's bringing down inflammation, that's soaking up free radicals, that's making sure all your organ systems are as efficient as possible. And when you get to those inflection points, you will do much better compared to your cohort group that is not on an anti-aging protocol. So that's how it works. So if people think, oh, anti-aging and longevity science and all that doesn't make sense. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I just gave you the mechanism. It's about aging methylation on DNA. It does happen. All right. Now, you can reverse some methylation once it happens, but it takes more effort. So it's better not to have it happen versus to have to reverse the methylation. So pay attention to what I'm saying. It works. Follow my advice. All right, let's go to live now.
Diplomat as Secretary of State, but he seems to be kind of reinterpreting, but he seems to be putting oil on troubled waters or whatever with these comments. And he's actually, I have to commend him. Some of the things he said has really kind of helped smooth things out, some of the rougher edges, if you will, of some of the comments made. But one thing I would point out, the issue you brought up of troops on, boots on the ground, troops in Ukraine as part of any peacekeeping agreement. Reports are coming out. There was this. President Trump would talk about getting access to rare earths in Ukraine, and they sent over a high-level delegation. They sat down and basically gave Ukraine a draft proposal to look at. President Zelensky said, "I'm going to take a look at it. There was various reports. One of the reports was that it was asking for pretty much about half of the rare earths in return for nothing.
Right.
A more recent report, though, is there was something in there. It's like it's still stuck around half of the rare earths value, and there have been some comments that President Trump has said, you know, $500 billion and trying to, you know, get reimbursed for all the money that we have sent over to Ukraine. I'm not quite sure if that was correctly interpreted.
Okay.
There are some folks running around with that. But one thing that is interesting in that draft document, and it sounds very credible, was discussion in exchange for U.S. security presence in Ukraine.
Okay.
In other words, basically talking about U.S. boots on the ground. Now compare that to all the other comments.
This Delta's like 48-19.
And keep in mind, this is all happening in the same week. It leaves me kind of scratching my head, and I kind of go back to my opening statement, which is there needs to be better coordination from a strategic communication standpoint, because you have different parts of the administration saying slightly different things, and in some cases saying significantly different things.
Yeah, and the saying slightly different things, I mean, that matters just as much as saying largely different things in negotiations that are this sensitive. I think you would agree with that assessment. I put this tweet up here because it looks like Starmer is going to go to D.C. next week to meet with Trump. And this is going to be their first in-person meeting, I believe, since the election here stateside. And to your point, we were talking about whether or not all of this is a negotiating tactic last week. Starmer coming out and saying, say whatever happens with Ukraine and Russia in order to keep the peace, to keep the line of contact, he was floating the idea of possibly having British troops keep the peace as part of this international peacekeeping force, if you will. And obviously we're speaking of hypothetical scenarios here because we're not even there yet. But maybe that is a response to some of the hard-dealing, freewheeling negotiations and statements being made by the U.S. Also, Donald Tusk, the Polish prime minister, saying this: if we Europeans fail to spend big on defense now, we will be forced to spend 10 times more if we don't prevent a wider war. He says, as the Polish PM, I'm entitled to say it loud and clear, since Poland already spends almost 5% of its GDP on defense, and we will continue to do so. That seems to be somewhat of a rallying cry to his fellow NATO members. Hey, bump it up to 5% like the Poles do.
Absolutely. In fact, the Poles are pretty much, they have been the most aggressive in saying, look, we got to spend on defense. There's a lot of reasons why the Poles have to spend on defense, because there's a Suwalki Gap, which is a gap between there's this Kaliningrad, this area that Russia controls. It's still part of Russia, that is physically cut off from the rest of Russia. And there's only so many ways to get there. And one of the ways is you go up this little gap that puts you in direct confrontation with Poland amongst some other NATO members. So they're right there. They're right on the edge. So they've been very aggressive. You know, if you look at the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, they have also been leaning forward. One of the newest NATO members, Finland, has always been leaning forward. They've been very aggressive in this. Some of the other members, to include even in Eastern Europe, are well below that. The goal, or I shouldn't say the goal, but the level that we see with Poland and some of the others. So they've got to really kind of bring it up. I'm not going to name them, although I will name some ones that are further away. Spain and Portugal have always been way under investing. And interestingly, traditionally, although they're over 2% now, they're about 2.4%, Great Britain. Within Great Britain, there's been a lot of discussion about how bad, and I've been doing a lot of things over the years. We've talked about how underinvested the British are in their own military. They've been shrinking. Well, his comments by Starmer are rather interesting, because just last week, one of the former chiefs of the British Armed Forces says, we don't have enough troops to do peacekeeping over in Ukraine. We're that far behind. He goes, I don't even know what we're talking about at this point. Now, with all that said, I would like to point out there is a model for what can be done. It's not at the scale that needs to be done in Ukraine, but if you look at what NATO has been doing in the Baltic states, where they have various different regiments, brigades, if you will, that go into Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and they work side by side with their host nation counterparts. doing defensive operations. I hate to use the term, but it's often called a tripwire force. You know, they're there. They are substantial. They are significant, but they're not going to stop the whole Russian army from rushing in. But there's enough to get committed. That is an example of what can be done. With that said, there's not enough forces. Now, if I could leave you with one thought, you may have recalled that President Trump met with Prime Minister Modi of India last week. All right. India has very large forces. They have an extremely large army. That would be a bit of a wild card, but this is not a NATO operation.
Okay.
And there is a possibility that they could be looking at other countries to provide that force. And one of those other countries might be India. And India might want to do that for a variety of different reasons, not the least of which is they're trying to kind of put some distance between them and Russia and trying to move closer to the West.
He wants him to shut up.
There are a variety of possibilities of what that peacekeeping force could look like.
So just briefly and lastly, Hal, we heard from Hegseth over the weekend as well. And he was essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, talking about European security guarantees from the United States. And he essentially said, well, it can't last forever. And what you're seeing in Paris today among some of these European allies led by the European Commission, was the United States right in saying the Europeans, Europe writ large, they need to get tougher. They need to think more about their security, about beefing up their military expenditures, because the United States isn't always going to be there. Did they need to hear that?
Yes.
Well, they kind of did. And a lot of the questions over the years is what will it take to get the Europeans serious about really investing in their own defense? It's been a problem. It's been a problem certainly since the end of the Cold War. There's been this rapid divestment of various different countries saying, well, there's no big threat now. The Soviet Union's gone, you know. And when they look at China, look, China's a long way away from Germany, all right? It's a long way away from France. It's not as far away from the United States. We have not just our presence in the Pacific, we have possessions in the Pacific which are very close to China, and we have commitments. And so we have this global requirement that they don't have. We've been trying to cajole them, trying to get them to invest more. You know, certainly the first Trump administration, they're the ones that said you need to get up to 2% of your GDP. Now we're saying 5%. What would it take to convince them that they have to take the reins of their own defense future? And if you look at it that way, and you look at how Donald Trump traditionally kind of does negotiation and business and other things, I'm kind of wondering if part of this isn't his negotiation technique, which is roll this stuff out there. You know, we would say, you know, it's obviously causing a bit of a storm, but throw this stuff out there and get the Europeans serious, talking about stepping up and doing their own defense needs. And if he looks at what's happening on Monday, he's probably saying, that's kind of what I was hoping to see happen. So I'm just pointing that out. It's a possibility, but in all great negotiations, you never show your hand. He's never going to admit that publicly. Even if they have success, he'll never admit that publicly. It's just the way those things are kind of done. So there might be a lot of this negotiating in public, shall we say.
Okay. Hal Kemper, as always, it's just one day, Hal, I will be speaking a lot this week. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We're going to shift over to the Delta Airlines crash. This is the take from CNN. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and pay attention to some of the ways I stack these different supplements to improve different organ systems. Ubiquinol is a supplement that you should be taking. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can buy. The most bioavailable form, all right? Most people that take CoQ10, they're getting the crappy version. This is the Ferrari version, all right? So please go to my store, get the Ubiquinol. Now, this will boost up your energy levels. It'll soak up free radicals because it's an antioxidant, and it'll also help to protect your neurons. When you get 40 years of age or older, you need to start protecting your neurons. Really important, because you don't want neurodegeneration to take place and to have problems when you're older. So taking Ubiquinol is really important. Please take it every day. It stacks really well with NAD+, and C60, resveratrol. Now, NAD plus is something that I've added to my stack. It boosts up energy levels. It helps to repair DNA damage, including mitochondrial DNA. And NAD plus protects neurons. So why not get 3 benefits in one? Boost up the energy levels, repair your DNA damage, and protect your neurons. It's a great stack with ubiquinol, resveratrol. Now, resveratrol is something that I've been taking for decades. For the biggest benefit with resveratrol is when you stack it with C60 or the NAD plus, the ubiquinol. All right, resveratrol really kicks into gear with a stack. All right, now it'll help with the mitochondrial health. It's an antioxidant, and it also will get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. So, because what will happen is you'll have cells that stop dividing, they just sit there. They're senesced, all right? And these senescence of these cells just start over time to accumulate garbage and lipofuscin. And what happens is that your tissues start building up all these cells that are in senescence, and your tissues don't perform as well. Well, you want to get rid of that stuff, all right? Resveratrol helps with that. Now, once you get rid of these cells, and it's in tissues that can regenerate, then it activates adult stem cells. There's a signal where those adult stem cells will start to repopulate with younger cells in that tissue. And with younger cells in the tissue, the tissues are going to perform better because they're younger cells, all right? So your average age in the tissue for the cells, measured based on telomere length, has increased. So your tissues at a telomere length measurement for age has actually become younger. All right? So please pay attention to what I do. It works. I've been taking this for decades. And guess what? I don't look like Alex Jones. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take resveratrol and stack it with NAD plus and with C60, with ubiquinol to get the max benefit. Because sometimes, you can take a supplement, but a lot of times when you stack it, there's a synergistic effect and it gets way better. You could think about it. How does your body really work with its biochemistry? It has all these different chemicals in feedback loops all working together, right? It's not one thing. It's not one chemical, right? There's multiple chemicals working in concert. That's why stacking works. NAC. NAC is something that I've added to my stack. Why? Because there's been many positive effects that anti-aging gurus have been doing with NAC, with their stack. And so I've added it to see what would happen. And I noticed a difference. So I decided to put NAC on my store and have people also add it to their stack. Now, NAC will boost up glutathione levels. That will help to soak up free radicals in a different pathway. So the more ways that you soak up free radicals, the better. So by taking resveratrol, you're soaking up free radicals. By taking ubiquinol, you're soaking up free radicals. Taking C60, which is a very potent antioxidant, you're soaking up a lot of free radicals. And in taking NAC, you're soaking up free radicals through glutathione pathway. All right, that's really good for you. Now, it also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney. So taking NAC is important. And NAC helps to reduce anxiety. And that's very beneficial for people that have ADHD, all right? But it also is very beneficial with people that have chronic stress. Because if you have a lot of anxiety, your cortisol levels are higher, And when you have chronic cortisol level, then it's immunosuppressive. That means that high stress reduces your immune system. And it also causes cardiovascular disease. So you want to calm your system down. Go into more parasympathetic. When you are more in parasympathetic, you'll have a better resting heart rate. You're reducing the chances of cardiovascular disease, and you're improving your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAC. Make sure you use discount 5 on any order, and you get $5 off. And again, like I said, it's the way you stack. I mean, a great stack, small stack would be NAD+ and ubiquinol. You add in resveratrol, boom, that's even more powerful. But a great stack would be these 4 that I just told you about. You're improving the repair mechanism for your DNA, and you're protecting your neurons, right? And they're antioxidants. This will help with getting rid of cells that are in senescence, and it's an antioxidant. And you are soaking up free radicals through glutathione pathway. So this is a great, this right here, taking these 4 is a great stack for you. So you can mix and match, you can take them separately, but I'm telling you how to get the max benefit from this stuff. Again, your biochemistry doesn't work with just 1 molecule or 2 molecules. It works in a orchestrative way, and it balances, and there's feedback loops, right? And that's what you're trying to mimic with stacking, all right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. All right, let's go to CNN. Talking about the Delta Airlines crash.
Operated by Endeavor Air, it's a wholly owned regional airline by Delta Airlines, was coming into land on runway 23 at Toronto Pearson International Airport. Pretty windy day there, winds gusting up to 35 knots, about 40 miles per hour. And you can see the evacuation that was successful with a capital S right there on the runway at Toronto Pearson. Folks coming out through the R1 door just behind the pilot's bulkhead there at the backside of the cockpit in the front of the first class cabin. And then the mid-wing exit where they were able to get out and essentially walk away from this crash. I want to show you this incredible new video taken from the evacuation inside the plane that was inverted. The floor, now the ceiling, the bins, the overhead bins, now on the floor. And I want you to watch this now. This is actually the first time I'm seeing it too. Watch.
Everything, drop it. Come on.
The instructions there from the flight attendant: drop it, drop everything, drop it. That is critical, especially in a evacuation like this.
Can you imagine all those stupid people that were flying from the United States to Canada, all right, and they're more worried about making sure that they get their overhead luggage when they just crashed their plane. This is the problem with people, is that they're literally have, they're selfish, right? If you're on a long plane flight, all right, especially international, and the pilot or the flight attendants say stay in your seat until the pilot tells you to get up, and people decide to get up before the landing, all right, and you're approaching the landing, you're in the descent and you're approaching and they're told to stay in your seat. You have people that are getting around trying to take out their luggage and all this. I mean, people just don't have common sense. It's a combination of not having common sense and very selfish, as if their world is the most important. This is very common in the United States, not so common in countries that have a better ethics, social ethics, like Japan. But in the United States, it's just a free-for-all. You know, even before you land, people are taking stuff out of the bin so they can rush to their next gate because their life is so important. So they just crash, they're upside down, and people are trying to get stuff out of the bin so they can carry it, you know, onto the tarmac. Think about how selfish that is, and how stupid of a mindset, because you don't know if that plane's going to blow up. You have no idea at that moment. At that moment, you didn't know. You're lucky that you're alive, let alone do you really need to make sure that you have your cardigan, or make sure that you know, got your 2 handbags that you put on, or your Gucci bag, or, you know, all those freebie, you know, all those what do they call them, tariff-free, you know, goods that they buy at the airport. Duty-free is what they call them.
Leave everything behind and not hamper your way out of the airplane, especially because we saw scenes of this plane on fire. The black smoke was pouring out almost right away as the airport rescue and firefighting crews came up with incredible rapidity. Hats up to them for putting out what appeared to be a fire there.
Okay, so it's on fire, and you got this woman that wants to save her Gucci bag, all right? And as she's bending down trying to get it out of the bin that's on the, you know, that's inverted, it's on the ground, you know, she's trying to get it out, and she's trying to get her Gucci bag and save it. Meanwhile, the plane blows up, and everyone behind her gets burned alive because she had to save her Gucci bag. That is the mentality of people, especially Americans. There are a lot of Americans that are like this.
Where the right wing used to be, that is where the fuel is stored for an airplane like this CRJ 900. The configuration of this plane, 76 seats, and all of them were full. 4 members of the crew, so 80 people in total. We've seen reports vacillating between 15 and 18, injured 2 to 3 with critical injuries. But pretty incredible that this full flight, essentially everybody leaving with their life, a very different story compared to 19 days ago when we were covering the disaster, the mid-air collision over the Potomac River, where all 67 people lost their lives. A really incredible and miraculous outcome.
I have lived a lot of years, even though I look young. All right, I have a lot of experience in lots of different fields, and I have some wisdom. I'm telling you, we are in the age of Aquarius, and it's tied to birds. Aquarius is about birds. Pisces was about fish, and Aries was about, I think, goats or sheep. But the point is that we're in an age of birds. And when you look at the metaphysics of this, birds can be the animal species, right? You know, the animal type, but also the mechanical type. What do we call it? The bird, you know, the planes, you know, it's a bird, right? You know, some people off the cuff will, you know, say that it's a bird, right? Is it a plane? Is it a bird? Oh, no, it's Superman, all right? So the point here is that things dealing with flying in the air, birds, are in the age of Aquarius. Now, I find it very odd that as we are in this age of Aquarius, or transitioning into it, that we're seeing a lot of plane problems. I also find it odd that we're seeing a lot of problems with the health of birds, avian flu, all right? I also find it odd that there is the UAPs, right? You know, and UFOs and all this stuff, right? So I don't remember ever in my lifetime seeing so many problems with planes in such a short amount of time. Now, there was a point in the 70s and the 80s where people had to worry about terrorism. It was a big problem where terrorists would get on a plane and they would blow it up. All right? So there was a point of fear because of terrorism. But there is something different that's going on here. This doesn't feel like terrorism. It feels like there is this metaphysical concept that birds representing Aquarius are falling out of the sky. It sounds like a bad omen of things to come. All right? That's the feeling I get with this. Bad omen. The birds are falling out of the sky. H5N1. Mechanical failure. Asteroids. Stars falling. Something big's coming. Something big is coming.
Pete, stay with us. I want to bring in some more of our aviation experts right now for some serious analysis. Peter Goals, how could a plane like this end up flipping the way it did?
Well, we won't know for sure until the Canadian Transportation Safety Board does their investigation. But as Pete indicated, winds, there were gusts upwards of 40 miles an hour. It could easily have clipped the wingtip and catapulted down the runway. It's happened before, and it is extraordinary that everybody got out of that plane alive.
Mary Schiavo, have you ever seen a plane upside down on the runway like this? What do you think may have happened?
Well, not exactly like this, but similar. And as Peter said, in those cases, in those other accidents, one was Asiana in San Francisco, one was United Airlines in Sioux City, and then a couple smaller planes. What happened is they came in on Asiana, they clipped the seawall, and then they didn't come in straight and level, and one wingtip hit the runway, and then the plane cartwheeled. Same thing in Sioux City. They had a gust of wind right as they came in, a long explanation leading up to that. But the wingtip hit, and then they flipped. And then in some other accidents, that was the same thing. And in others, it's where they have exited the runway and encountered something such as an embankment or other equipment that then caused them to become inverted. But in a scene like this, it is where a wingtip is hit. In many cases, it breaks the wing off. The wingtip is hit, and the plane rolls. Fortunately here, no fire. In those other ones, there was fire.
Yeah. Pete Bunteed, I want to play a little bit more of that new video of the evacuation once again. The slide clearly did not deploy here. Talk about the process of evacuating an upside down plane. You know,
I'll tell you, Wolf Blitzer is a fucking idiot. The plane is upside down. The slides are attached to the bottom part of the port of the doorway. The bottom part of the doorway is now on top, not on bottom. So if it was deployed, it would prevent people from getting out. I mean, just use some fucking common sense, dude. I mean, think about this. In a normal plane that needs to deploy the slides, it's upright. And that slide is attached to the bottom of the doorway. And it will go down and people will be able to use the slide. But if the plane is upside down, then if the slide was deployed, then what would happen is it would be blocking the window so people couldn't get out. This is why he's a fucking journalist on CNN and not an engineer. What an idiot.
CRJ like this even has slides, Wolf. It is really critical to get out because seconds mean lives. and everybody here escaped with their life. We saw in that first image there, in the first few frames of video, the overhead bins, now the floor, and folks clearing them to try and get out of that overwing emergency exit to get out onto the runway and into the biting cold, about 18 degrees Fahrenheit there in Toronto, not countering in the wind chill. This is something that is pretty harrowing. And this is a good reminder that flight attendants are not just there for your convenience, they are also there for your safety. They are aviation's first responders. We know it was a crew of 4, so 2 pilots, 2 flight attendants, trying to get everybody out and away from this airplane, in some cases can be a ticking time bomb. Fire is very serious, and we know there was at least some smoke, which means fire, in an airplane like this, and the airport firefighting and rescue crews did a marvelous job of putting it out very quickly. But a fire is about as serious as it can get in aviation. It's on a scale of 1 to 10, that's really an 11. So to get people out quickly and safely without many serious injuries is really key. Important to remember, a lot of injuries can happen after the plane comes to a rest. So taking off your seatbelt when you're now hanging from the seatbelt in your seat upside down can cause injuries too. When you release it too soon, that's when people get head and neck and spine injuries. It can be very dangerous. So it's really, really critical to pay attention to what the flight crew is telling you. And you have to imagine the terror that the passengers were feeling here was probably a pretty bumpy approach, but then they're in a dark passenger cabin with what appears to be maybe at least one side blocked. The left side of the airplane looked at least partially blocked based on the way the angle of the plane is rolled there, and trying to get out of only one set of emergency exits. This is clearly not a very ideal situation, and everyone did a very good job getting out.
Yep, that's very important. Peter Goals, we know at least 15 people were injured, 2 critically injured. 80 people in total were on board, 76 passengers, 4 crew members. What does the relatively low number of injuries tell you?
Well, it clearly underscores the effectiveness of 16G seats, Wolf. These are seats that have been mandated since the mid-2000s. Final rule in 2009 that said that aircraft have to have seats that can withstand a 16G impact, which this clearly was. And if by having those seats, passengers remain secure and in place if their seatbelts are on tight. Previous to that, we saw numerous accidents where passengers survived the impact on the ground, but were thrown helter-skelter within the cabin, and many died. So this is a real tribute to a government regulation that saved lives.
Yeah, the key is to have your seatbelt on and to have it on tight to make sure that you're protected. Mary, strong winds were reported around the time of the crash earlier today in Toronto. How much could that have played a factor in all of this today?
It could be a huge factor, and as Pete was just reading off the weather conditions of what the plane was facing, this aircraft, I was on one of these same ones going into LaGuardia, and this is how I happened to look up the limitations. The crosswind limitation on landing is 35 knots. If the runway is dry and clear and clean braking action, if you don't have good brake on ice on the runway, your crosswind limitation is 15 knots. If they had enough to get down and they were coming into land, they could have been in the right, but at the last minute got a bad gust that upended them. And I've had that happen to me when I'm flying, and it's terrifying. I literally had the plane set up on one wingtip. Now, I was lucky. It didn't catch the wingtip, but if that happened right as they hit the runway, even if they were within their aircraft limits, there wouldn't be much they could do about it except try to fly out of it.
Yeah, the winds are very, very critically important. I was flying into Washington Dulles Airport last night, and it was really windy, and the plane was bumping up and down as we were coming in. Fortunately, it was a safe landing and all of that. Pete, let me play a little bit more of that.
Before we go to the next part of this video, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ashwagandha root. This helps to control blood glucose levels and bring down cortisol levels. By doing that, it's improving your immune system and reducing inflammation. Turmeric is a great antioxidant. It'll soak up free radicals, but it also brings down pro-inflammatory cytokines. When you stack these together, you're bringing down inflammation to improve your immune system and your cardiovascular system. So it's best when you take turmeric with ashwagandha and ashwagandha with turmeric. And to really supercharge that stack I just told you, lignans. This is a powder. You mix it with soft foods or mix it with filtered water or a smoothie. It's up to you. But this will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, and help with your immune system and your endocrine system. But by bringing down that inflammation, it's synergistic with the turmeric and the ashwagandha for your cardiovascular health. Why? Well, by bringing down inflammation, not only are you helping your immune system, but you're reducing that inflammation in the vascular system. And that inflammation is the first signal to start depositing plaque, because that inflammation causes a disruption in the intima of your blood vessel that will lead to LDL getting into the media of your blood vessel and eventually oxidizing and turning into plaque through macrophages eating that oxidized LDL and turning into a foam cell. So if you reduce the inflammation, you're reducing the chance of further plaque buildup. And if you follow the protocol, I have a longevity cardiovascular box that you can get. If you follow that protocol of all those different supplements, which include these, you can actually over time shrink the plaque that has built up. You can't eliminate all the plaque, but let's say if you had a 50% blockage in your carotid, you could bring it down to about 10% or 15%. That's a major improvement. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get lignans, get the turmeric, get the ashwagandha root, take the stack, improve your immune system, and improve your cardiovascular health.
Mission from before the crash in Toronto. Listen to this.
Tower 49, Tower with 27023, goes 33, clear the line on 823, my gas pipe off the black path of the aircraft in front of it.
Clear the line, 23 is over, 4819.
So Pete, what could the air traffic controller have meant when he said, and I'm quoting now, slight bump in the glide path?
Well,
what does that mean?
Let's go through it sort of line by line. That's the airplane, Endeavor 4819 or Delta 4819. You buy a Delta ticket, but the flight is operated by Endeavor Air. Checking in with the tower controller saying that we're on the approach to runway 23, meaning they're lined up. They were on the ILS, that's the Instrument Landing System, essentially a radio beam that gets you lined up with the runway and on a glide path and a stable approach. And the data shows that the approach looked okay, may have been a little bit bumpy, but it looked like they were stabilized, they were on altitude, they were on speed, looked okay. The tower
All right,
controller
let's stop
then
right
gives
there.
them-
Let's stop right there for a sec. And another metaphysical observation with this. So birds are falling out of the sky, but also there's a wind coming. There's a wind that's building up. We're having colder weather. We're having strange weather patterns that lead to infernos in California. There is this, the wind is like a plague. The birds falling out of the sky is like a plague. And like I said, we are in a larger version of Exodus. We are in a larger version of Egypt. Everybody. We're all slaves. We think we're not slaves. We're slaves to a global version of Egypt and all of its idolatry, all of its mysticism, all of its magic. We're slaves in Egypt, and we are seeing plagues happening. They're starting to build up. And it's not just this year. It's been over several years. So weather patterns are changing that are causing disruption in other systems, flight patterns. The inferno, I mean, literally, LA burnt down to the ground because of a strong wind pattern that came in. So we're seeing plagues happening.
A weather report essentially telling them the winds 270 at 23, gusting 33. So that means winds out of the west at 23 knots, gusting 33 knots, so about 40 or so miles per hour. That's a pretty stiff wind, and it's at an angle to the runway of about 40 degrees. That's about a
Now, obviously, you know, winds usually are coming westward, but not always. I mean, in New York, in the nor'easter, you could have winds that are coming from the east or like the northeast or even the north that kind of fold in on itself and come back down on to New York. So it's not always the west, but if you look at the temple, the machine, what are some of the things that are in the temple that are tied to the compass? The west is where the Holy of Holies are. That's where the Ark is. That's where literally the singularity of where the Shekinah rests, right above the Ark of the Covenant in the Holy of Holies. That's the west. In the north is the shulchan, the table, for the bread, and the I think they also put I think there's also frankincense or something that's put there too. But the bread loaves are put on the shulchan. In the south is where the menorah is, where the light is. And in the east is where the Kohanim are coming from. But also in the east is where the sacrifices are taking place. So I get this sense on a metaphysical level that with the building up of the wind, the building up of something big coming from that resting spot of that singularity is coming and going to cause destruction, because people have not been living the way they should be. That the wind is coming, the western wind. It's not a northern wind. It's not a southern wind. It's not an eastern wind. It's a western wind that causes destruction, a flipping over of a bird, making things upside down.
Bite into the relationship, the heading of the runway. And typically in a crosswind, pilots will essentially, if this is the runway and the wind is coming from this direction, they'll point into the wind, it's called a crab, and essentially track straight down the runway, even though the airplane is pointed a different direction, or they may put one wing into the wind and slip down to try and make it so that they could stay lined up with the runway.
All right, so that's some good info, but I get this feeling that there's some metaphysics to this. Let's go to, I'm not sure if live now, we should go to live now, or if we should go to France 24. Let's go to live now.
They're laborious and they're long, but we'll follow them through the end here. And in the meantime, let's take a quick commercial break. More top news where that came from in just 2 minutes.
All right. While they're on commercial break, let's go to France 24. But I want to just mention really quick, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver. This is a dual purpose. This helps to improve your skin, speed up the process of healing wounds. And if people are sick around you, at work, at home, guess what? Put the gel on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils, stays active for 5.5 hours. Get the gel in the quick dispenser or in the tube form. Have this at your house, at your work. You never know when you need it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can also use this as an aftershave on your legs or on your face. It's a great product, dual purpose.
Excess of 2% of their GDP. Also saying, and this is also interesting because this is a different position to that of France and the UK, and who have been saying that they were ready potentially to send peacekeepers into Ukraine if indeed a peace deal is reached. Well, for the German Chancellor, this is not on the table at the moment. He considers it is too early to speak of this situation. He says for now, this peace deal has not been brokered, and he's saying all these discussions are taking place behind the back of Ukraine, and that of course Ukraine needs to be consulted. So we have different positions here when it comes to what to do. The Polish are aligned with the Germans, by the way. So we have different positions as to what needs to be done immediately after the peace. And of course, there is all the long-term negotiation when it comes to the security framework of Europe.
The security framework of Europe, which is also important. James Andre will be crossing back live to you when there's more from there. Many thanks for joining us here in the France 24 debate. Let me ask you, Rio Terrace, this issue of what you would like to see come out of this summit, or informal gathering, excuse me, we're not supposed to call it a summit.
Yeah, first and foremost, I don't like it be called emergency summit, which of course shows the world that NATO was not ready for that kind of statements. I would
guess what? The euro was not ready, and they are in an emergency because guess what? Trump is basically saying to the euro whiners, we're doing it in America's way, and we don't fucking care.
Because NATO's strength is unity.
But excuse me, but if this was NATO, if this was unity, if this was a moment of unity, if this was a moment of unity for, excuse me, Rio Terrace.
With what money, how much money we could stand behind Ukraine to win this war, because Russia is losing this war right now, despite their messaging from Russian side saying that Ukraine is losing. But
both sides are exhausted, and they need other people to help, other countries to help them. The Russians need help from North Korea. The Russians need help from China. Ukraine needs help from the United States and Germany and Britain, but mostly from the United States. Both sides are exhausted. They can't continue on the war as long as no one helps. They have to negotiate a peace. They have to.
You talk about it being a moment of unity, Rio Terrace, but if it was a moment of unity for NATO, the meeting would be held in Brussels, not in Paris.
I don't think it makes any difference where the meeting is. The main thing is people coming out of it should have one single clear message, and in the package their decisions about how they will act and what are the actions taken.
New York Governor Hochul calls meeting to discuss future of New York City Mayor Adams. Why do we need the governor of New York to make that determination of what to do with Mayor Adams? Can't he make the decision that he's not going to step down? I mean, it's really going to get messy if Hochul tries to force him to step down. See, and Hochul was the lieutenant governor for Cuomo, and Cuomo's trying to become the mayor of New York because he's trying to reboot his political career. Hochul's Right. It's crazy.
But there where I agree, in fact, with someone like Chancellor Scholz, who's been very cautious about troops on the ground, and the Poles as well have been very cautious about troops on the ground. But although in principle they could potentially take part of something, we don't know what they would be there to do. Would European countries, for instance, go to Ukraine to help Ukraine give it security guarantees if Ukraine does not agree to any kind of peace deal which is negotiated above its head between Putin and Trump? There are so many questions that need to be asked first. Would European countries want to go to Ukraine to help enforce a peace deal which is imposed upon us as Europeans by the Americans and the Russians? There's so many very, very gritty questions, and we have no idea what's going to come out of these talks. Zelensky has been very clear he will not agree to any peace deal in which he is not part of the negotiations. So I think we're very, very far from knowing what we're going to see and what kind of peace or not potential European plus British troops would be defending, keeping, enforcing. It's very, very.
I mean, literally think about this.
So Europeans.
When you think about the three major superpowers, it's the United States, Russia, and China. Not the United States, Russia, and Ukraine. So don't you think that Russia has a little bit bigger seat at the table? Now, I'm sure Zelensky will get, the high chair, and be pushed towards the table. But you know what? Or the booster seat. But the reality of the situation is Ukraine is not a superpower. Russia is. Russia has a whole nuclear deterrence program from the Cold War that the United States is concerned about. All right. So it behooves the United States to talk to Russia first and not Zelensky. I mean, Zelensky is really beyond his britches. He needs to just pull up his big boy pants and realize that he's not, as important figure as Putin in this regard. I mean, come on. How could Zelensky think he's an equal partner to the peace agreement? He's not a superpower.
Try to fix those and raise the level on the audio and then get back to you. Jean-Paul Palomiros, have you been conferring with your former U.S. equivalents from NATO over the last 48 hours? What are they telling you?
Well, they are telling me that the Europeans should have done much more before. I mean, since Dwight Eisenhower was Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, the message has been there. And now Mr. Trump is meaning it. Is meaning, this is the last call, I would say. So this is why this meeting is so important. Now we have to really move the European defense together, including the UK. That's very important to show to walk the talk in a certain way, to show that we are ready really to take that seriously, to balance the military efforts in NATO with the US, to take Mr. Trump by his word, to leverage the percentage of GDP. Just a side note, France is well over, unfortunately, 3% deficit. So let's see how the French will assume their responsibility in that field. But this is an internal issue. And more on that is that we should assume the short term as well, because the negotiations, behind the negotiations, the question is, would the US keep on supporting Ukraine during those days, or will they stop? If they stop, we have done a real crisis, because the Europeans are not able to fulfill the role so far. and then Mr. Putin will be delighted to see that happening.
All right, when you talked to, you mentioned the UK there, the UK and
I just want to plug two products here really quick. The Boomer Boost is the last pillar of the core protocol to help to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It has a pretty extensive profile here that you can read on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Taking Boomer Boost, you get 68 nutrients. It focuses on helping your heart health, your cardiovascular health. It helps with brain health, and it will help to improve your muscles, your strength, boost up your energy levels and your metabolism. All right. Take this every day. There's a big scooper. You can take it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie. Some people mix it with milk. It's up to you how you take it. I take it with soft foods like hummus. There's a big scooper in here. Take it once a day, either for your breakfast or for your lunch. You'll lose weight. You're going to get a lot more energy. You're going to sleep better. And you're going to have more mental acuity. Now, you're going to see the benefits of this in 72 hours. 72 hours. 72 hours after you start taking this, if you've never taken it before, 72 hours, you're going to see the benefits. All right? This is powerful stuff, and you should be taking it every day. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have this more energy, and you're going to actually just want to go work out, or you'll want to be more active. Right? If you look at, let's say, a puppy, it has lots of energy. Why? Because it has lots of ATP, and it has a really revved up metabolism. You look at someone older, in their geriatric years, and they're not that healthy, they don't have the energy, and they just sit there because they have low ATP. They have mitochondria is worn out. They don't have enough healthy mitochondria. And when your cells are aging, the actual number of mitochondria in the cell starts to die off. So you don't just have one mitochondria, you have lots of mitochondria in a cell. Well, when you get older and that cell gets older and stressed, well, you actually have mitochondria in the cell dying. So you don't want that, all right? You want lots of mitochondria, lots of ATP, lots of energy. Boomer Boost literally boosts up your health. And you'll see the benefits within 72 hours. Within 72 hours. So please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost. But better yet, it works much better with Gladiator barley or heirloom barley. The barley here is high density protein. And the barley, either heirloom barley or the Gladiator barley, will help to detoxify your body on a daily basis, because you're going to take this every day, bring down inflammation. So that's going to help with your immune system. And also, if you work out, you're going to be recovering quicker. And it soaks up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. It's another pathway to soak up free radicals. This Gladiator works really well with Myotrol if you want to build up muscle. But if you take these two together, you're going to be able to control your A1C levels. That means you're going to, if you have diabetes, you may be able to reverse diabetes for yourself over time. If you're borderline diabetic, which many Americans are, especially when they're older, you're not going to be borderline diabetic anymore. You're going to go back to normal levels. All right. The best way this works is to take the Gladiator barley and the Boomer Boost together and do some resistance training and cardiovascular, and it's really going to supercharge bringing down that A1C levels. So this is a great stack, great stack. And if you're an athlete, older or younger, taking Gladiator barley and the Boomer Boost as your pre-workout or your after workout fueling source, and mixing it with the Myotrol, you're really going to get some serious gains in your sport. So this is a great way to get healthy. And if you're an athlete, this is a great way to fuel your body. Now, you can also take the boost, you can take the boost with heirloom barley too. That does the same thing as gladiator barley, except it doesn't focus on the strength gains. It does the detox, it does the lower inflammation and soaking up the free radicals. So you can get these separately on my store. You can take the boost separately or the gladiator barley separately. It's up to you, or the heirloom barley separately, or you can get it in the boost box. All right, I have a longevity boost box that you get the boomer boost and your choice of gladiator barley or heirloom barley. And the longevity box is designed at a discount, right? Compared to buying these individually on my store. And you can use discount 5 on top of that. So you can buy these separately, or you can get the longevity boost box. It's up to you. But also, let me tell you how to take the barley. You get a big scooper in the gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. My recommendation is to take a half a scoop. But if you're a more active person, or you want more of the benefits of the detox or bringing down inflammation, take a full scoop. But I recommend for most people taking a half a scoop. But if you're more active, then taking a full scoop. All right. But you got to do that every day, and you mix it with the boomer boost if you're going to do it together. If you're going to do these together, do it in the morning or take it in during lunchtime. All right, in the afternoon. And what you're going to notice is you're going to be losing weight, you're going to be gaining strength, and you're going to have a lot more energy. All right, and you're going to sleep better. You're just going to have that. You're just going to feel younger because I'll tell you why it's happened. Why you feel younger. It's because you have more ATP. It's that simple. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the boomer boost. Get the gladiator barley and the heirloom barley. Use discount 5.
The whole Europe and our values. And Estonia, if you ask whether we are afraid, no, we are not afraid. We are prepared. We are spending 4% of the GDP on defense. Of course, Estonian pensioners, old people, and children would like to have a better social guarantees. But the Estonian people have decided to pay more for defense because they understand what it is all about. And I hope that that countries who have not a direct border with Russia will understand that there's something like burden sharing is very important, and that NATO countries together will decide 3% or more allocated for defense very quickly and very soon. Because otherwise we will not be able to deal with the threat situation.
So the threat situations
with or without the United States. But I'm still convinced we will do it with the United States.
With or without the United States, but you're convinced with. Clearly, there's an agreement not to speak to reporters. We saw the president of the European Council, the European Commission make their exit there from the presidential palace live. And they're not usually camera shy. Jean-Paul Paloméros, you just heard Rio Terras talk about controlling Ukraine's airspace as a former head of the French Air Force. Can that be done without the United States?
That we could certainly achieve something with the US, the UK, Royal Air Force, the French, and the German together, I would say, and some others as well. But that will make us belligerent. We must face the truth, and our countries have decided not to be involved as directly in the war, and I cannot see that changing, and certainly not on the short term. This is one point. The other point I would like to stress, this is that already well before the discussions between Russia and the USA, Mr. Putin has won part of the battle because Mr. Trump has really stated very firmly that NATO was not an option for the future of Ukraine. And I feel this is very sorry. I'm very sorry about that. Obviously, the mandate of a US president is 4 years, but 4 years will be a long, long time for Ukraine. So
Mr. Putin should be happy with that. I hope that Mr. Trump will not go further in giving more freedom of maneuver for Putin.
Gold futures are going up in the Asian session at 2,917, and Brent crude oil is trading at $75.26 a barrel. And the Hang Seng Index has been rallying since the open, and it's trading at 22,935.
I say, if you look to the French military forces, I would say yes. We know that as far as the number is concerned, obviously, like any European countries, we have a problem of against the high density, high intensity warfare and on the long term, but nevertheless, we have high-end capacity, high-end capability. Nevertheless, the question is more on the support of the people. And this is why I think we need a very clear and strong voice out of the politicians in France to make sure that the French people understand what is at stake, that freedom comes with a price, and then it is time really to take that very seriously, because in a few months, in a few years, it could be too late if we let that down. So yes, the answer is yes, but
sitting here in Paris, Samantha de Benjamin, General Palomero saying public opinion right now doesn't see this as a direct security threat for the most part.
No, I think very few public opinions.
Are we overstating it?
Are we overstating the threat, or?
Yeah, here I am asking about whether or not Estonia and France are ready in case of a direct conflict.
Well, let's put it this way.
That's a far-fetched question.
I don't think it's a far-fetched question at all. I think that the threat is real, and I'm basing that thought on the fact that a lot of European intelligence agencies think that that threat is real. So how could this threat play out? One idea that has actually been put forward by a colleague of mine at Chatham House called Keir Giles is that in order to deter France or another NATO member state from coming to the rescue of a country like Estonia, one could imagine a two-pronged attack. An attack on Estonia, for instance, and I apologize that we're using Estonia as the example, but it does seem to be one of the most likely candidates for an attack. And at the same time, a missile attack on a European city to put absolute fear into the minds of the electorate in Germany, in France, and somewhere else, to then dissuade public opinion from encouraging the idea of coming to the defense of a country like Estonia, which seems far away. What would happen then is that NATO would then cease to exist. We're talking about whether NATO is dead. NATO is not dead today. But if a NATO member is attacked, and for whatever reason, other members do not agree to invoke Article 5, which is the idea that an attack on one is an attack on all, or do not give an adequate response in an Article 5 situation, then we have the death of NATO. So would public opinion respond? It's up to the politicians to explain that France's defense, Germany's defense is part of NATO at the moment, and that without NATO, it will be a lot more expensive to keep that defense. People often think about their bottom lines, and this is what it will be about at the end of the day.
NATO's not dead, you say, but it is in trouble. And for instance, just remind people, while Russia bombed a cover built to contain radiation at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant last week, J.D. Vance saw danger elsewhere, the U.S. Vice President at the Munich Security Conference.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
Nick Holdsworth, J.D. Vance in that speech then goes on to chastise his hosts for refusing to invite the far-right AfD to the conference, the far-right AfD, which is pro-Putin views often, and which is polling second in next Sunday's general election.
It is indeed. It slightly has upped its poll numbers from about 20.3% to about 21%. If it does get those number of votes, it's going to double its seats in the Reichstag, in the Bundestag, the German parliament. And it's going to have an influence, even though the remaining parties say that they will maintain the firewall, the so-called.
What's the reaction where you are, Nick, to J.D. Vance on stage, basically endorsing electoral alliances with the far right?
People are horrified. I mean, there were 200,000 people out on the streets of Berlin just yesterday protesting against the AfD. It's horrified the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. He sharply rebuked Vance for interfering in domestic German politics. It's delighted the Russian Speaker of the Russian Duma, the Parliament, Vyacheslav Volodin, said that J.D. Vance had called out Europe correctly and had identified failures in European democracy, as if Volodin is in a position to lecture Europe on democracy. The Russians are delighted. A Russian TV commentator said that France had given the Europeans a good caning.
Good caning is we're watching images of Giorgia Meloni.
Well, the thing is the Euro whiners need good caning. I mean, they're living in a bubble. They're used to being at the all-you-can-eat buffet called the United States taxpayer.
Nazism at this time, and right now, where you are standing, they're talking about this on the campaign trail. I know there's a second night of lead candidates debate later. That's why Olaf Scholz left the meeting early here in Paris. One of those issues is, and this is what Rio Terrace has been telling us about in this discussion, spending more and carving out an exception for defense. How popular, though, is that in Germany?
It's not very popular at all. The Germans have suffered a couple of years of recession. Most Germans are concerned about the bottom line, the cost of a basket of shopping in the local supermarket, whether pensions are going to increase in line with inflation, that sort of thing. But we do have the front runner in the elections for the next Chancellor, Friedrich Merz of the CDU, saying that he will spend more on defence. Scholz saying, yes, we'll spend more on defence, but not quite as assertive as Friedrich Merz. Although we should remember that Friedrich Merz was the politician who accepted the support of the AfD in an anti-immigration vote in Parliament just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you were mentioning it earlier, says Samantha DeBenzer, and the fact that for the time being, Europeans are saying this won't happen without us. But could it?
I think we've entered a world where anything is possible. I mean, we've been the idea 3 years ago, and we're approaching 3 years of the beginning of war beginning of the second phase of the war in Ukraine. There were debates, whether we would send more anti-tank missile launchers. Now we're actually talking about putting boots on the ground. I think that we have come to a stage where anything is possible. Who would have imagined, even a year ago, in spite of the warnings the United States were giving us about disengagement from Europe, such hostile rhetoric coming from both J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth. So I think we have come into a world where anything's possible. What else is Europe going to do? Is Europe going to abandon Ukraine? I honestly don't see that happening yet. And if it does, it will make the world a lot more dangerous for all of us in Paris, in London, in Berlin, and potentially even in Washington.
Ukraine's president in the United Arab Emirates this Monday before Turkey, and he'll be in Saudi Arabia Wednesday. That's after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio speaks with his Russian counterparts. Here was Zelensky speaking by video link to journalists back home earlier.
Ukraine is not participating in the upcoming negotiations. Ukraine knew nothing about it. Ukraine regards any negotiations on Ukraine without Ukraine as negotiations with no result, and we cannot acknowledge anything, any arrangements about us that were made without us.
Rio Terrace, what do you do now in this case? What do European leaders do? There you have Volodymyr Zelensky saying he's clearly been broadsided by the Trump administration.
So what?
well, what we should do, we should stay with Ukraine and help Ukraine. We should remember that US has 350 million citizens, Russia 140, and Europe is 450 European Union plus the others. So we are second or third biggest economical power, and we're talking about we are not able to support. Of course we are. Today the support to Ukraine costs every European Union citizens 1.2 cups of coffee a month.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the NATO kinase. This is fibrinolytic, and it helps to control your total cholesterol. It brings down LDL levels and increases your HDL levels. So if you want to improve your cardiovascular health, take NATO kinase. It stacks really well with D3 and K2. D3 helps you to absorb calcium. It's a gene expression cofactor, so your cells will operate better. It also helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. D3 is great to help with bone density and also to help with your cardiovascular health. K2 and K7 helps to improve your bone density. It is synergistic with D3, and K2 will help with your cardiovascular health. Why? Because it helps to reduce that calcium buildup around plaque. All right. So the best way to do this is not to take these separately, but to take them together. Take the D3 and take the K2 together, and that you'll get the benefits of the cardiovascular and bone density, especially when you do resistance training. And you stack these together and you get the benefits, additional benefits for your cardiovascular health. So please take this stack. It's pretty powerful, especially when you do resistance training. All right, because like I said, if you follow these stacks the way I'm instructing you, and you do certain things like resistance training and you're stacking this, you're getting two benefits in one. You're helping your heart and your vascular system, but you're also helping your bone density. All right, and so you're targeting two things at the same time. Isn't that what you want? I mean, so get healthy. Follow my advice. Now, we've been doing this transmission for 2 hours and 42 minutes. It's time to shut this thing down. I'll be doing another one in the morning to go over the market, the U.S. market when it opens up. Thank you for following me on Rumble and YouTube and the ones that joined on X-Spaces. Again, when I do X-Spaces simulcast, you can ask questions. This is supposed to be an interactive show. So thank you for listening and have a nice night. Remember, discount 5, all caps, number 5, and you get $5 off any order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. So go to my website and get the products that will help you improve your health and your wellness so you have more vitality. Thank you for listening and have a good night.